All right, guys, I'm very happy to have this wonderful musician here, this entire band. A very special person in my life, because before I started teaching at UNO, I was teaching at Loyola. And believe it or not, he was a student here. Ellis Marcellus was a student. I mean, he was getting his master's degree at the time. And you studied with him too, right?
I did, yeah.
Right. Anyway, he's an amazing composer, pianist, leader, arranger, does everything. So how about a hand for Jon Cowherd?
While they're setting up, I'll introduce the band. On the guitar, we have Steve Cardenas.
Yeah.
Steve I've known for probably 8 to 10 years.
Well, I mean, we've known each other, but I started playing with him.
Right. And I heard Steve a lot with, he played with Paul Motion for a long time, and Joey Barron, and Nora Jones.
Look, before she became famous.
Right. I used to hear Steve like in all these different contexts, which I thought was so cool. He always sounds like himself, you know, he didn't have to like completely change his approach, well, his sound at least. And I want to talk about sound a little bit today. But while I'm introducing the guys, let's keep going with that. Alan Mednard on the drums. And we've been playing for a few years. I know Alan, you've been playing with Alan Harris some, right?
No, not Alan Harris.
Oh. I know you're associated with
Arco.
Arco, yeah,
Yeah.
great pianist in New York.
With like Jeremy Pell.
Right, Pell.
Going blank, but yeah.
He's a great drummer, very dynamic, and great ears, listens. And Tony Shear on the bass. Tony plays a lot with Joe Frizzell. I'm kind of blanking. Who else do you play with? You play with Nora.
Nora, with you, Sex Mob.
Me, Sex Mob, yeah.
Joey, too.
Joey Barron.
Yeah.
These guys play with a lot of different kinds of bands, a lot of different artists in New York. A lot of kind of free stuff too, right?
Rocket Science.
Rocket Science. And anyway, we're gonna play. We'll probably just play. We'll play a blues maybe to get going. Talk about playing as a band, interplay. Listening and reacting. Maybe getting a little free, taking it somewhere off the out of the written form, not the form, but I think you know what I mean. Getting a little free with things. You want to play Visa?
What's that?
Just blues in C.
Okay.
Charlie Parker.
Say, John, can I get like a D?
You'll know it.
Okay. Okay.
You will know it.
Okay. Ready.
All
Ready.
right.
All right.
2, 1, 2, 2. talk about a few things that we were doing there. Obviously, first thing we could talk about is motivic development, which Tony's solo was really great. He started with, not to analyze everything everybody did, but I particularly thought that was killer, the way you used this one motif and you took it like across the bar, and you made it very musical, but it was not obvious where the phrases and the blues form was. But so you have to really pay attention. But do you want to talk a little bit about like that kind of stuff? Or?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think what did I do?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's weird. Like sometimes I found at a certain point I was overthinking bass solos. And I started listening I was thinking about conga players. Like, 2 or 3 drums, or even one drum, but just a few sounds, like, high sound, low sound, short, long, high, low, a few different options. Start with a few things, start with something, and say it a few different ways. And that's all I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking of anything else. The less I think, the better off I am. I'm not so good with the informational part of things. But if I can hear it and just mess around with it, then sometimes I can enjoy finding something there that unravel into something else. That comes.
Right. A lot of times I teach improvisation and composition and how that's related, and improvisation is basically sped up composition, and taking like a short little idea and then what can you do just to twist it, and obviously you can look at melodic ways to compose melodies like Bach did. If you wanted to, if anyone's analyzed a fugue, you have like an exposition, which is the main melody. Then you can turn it around exactly backwards, which is retrograde, or upside down, which is inversion. And so I like to think that way sometimes. There are different ways to like get ideas, and I think listening to what people are doing is one of them. Getting ideas rhythmically or harmonically or melodically, but then thinking about how you're going to develop that. And sequence is another one. So, whatever it was, you were taking it into different keys and maybe starting it in a different place in the bar, but kind of keeping that idea kind of rhythmically the same, even though it moved around a lot in the form. So I think that's a great, starting place. I love that.
Yeah, I think all musicians, whatever they do, like I know like songwriters who sing, they, like Kate Fenner, right, my friend Kate, singer-songwriters that I know, even they, are not like usually improvising musicians, some of these folks, but everyone has the things that they hear. Everyone has melodic things they hear. And it's good to broaden that. It's good to mix those up. But it's also good to embrace the things you hear and mess with them, and things that are natural to your ear. I don't know whether it's like, I don't know why we all hear the things we do. If you're walking around, you're not thinking about it, you're whistling randomly, certain phrases will come out, certain people. I don't know why that is, but I think it's good. It's there for a reason. Like we can use it and broaden those things, broaden those ideas that come naturally, and then maybe explore what's more uncomfortable around those, like kind of turn them inside out of it too,
You guys are really saying it. I guess
the thing about, it's a weird balance, like, because part of you is like, well, if I'm gonna work on stuff in practice, I have to think about what I'm doing, you know, somewhat. But when you're playing, you want to practice enough and work, and it's not like you're working out phrases or licks or anything like that, but you're just working on how you're putting things together, and you're getting a sense of, it's sort of like, I always felt like the greatest analogy was language, you know? Because when we're playing, when we're kind of feeling at our most comfortable, we're playing in a way that's just like speaking with the song, you know? And we've done enough playing or practicing we're not thinking about, oh, what arpeggio or what scale or, you know, all that kind of stuff. We know what it sounds like, so we can go to those places. But trying to find that balance, like, okay, if I'm practicing all this and I get on the bandstand, how do I not think, you know? You know, sometimes it takes a while to get past that point. And I couldn't even tell you, like, what do, you know? Some of it's just trial and error, but I can tell you one thing for sure. Don't second guess yourself so much to where you put yourself in a little place of like being afraid to try things. And because I always tell my students, I say, you know, the worst thing you can do when you're starting a solo is go, you know, I wish I hadn't played that, you know, because you get these things in your head like, so what? Just start a clean slate, you know? And maybe you could work with that, you know? Maybe you did something, oh, I didn't mean to do that, you know? You know, you start to find ways to, it's not like, you know, you need to make up for every little thing you didn't mean to, but just play and don't think anything about it. And just try to play with who you're playing with, and don't feel like you have to impress anybody, and just be in all that wonderful place that's music. You know?
Right, yeah, I think
Yeah.
all great points. Yeah, I guess it's like, in this type of environment when you're in school, it's a great opportunity to just play with, I don't know, your peers on a regular basis, but, you know, outside of school, inside of school. Like, so it's a good time to try things, right? And over time, as you get to play more with other people, senior, you know, less senior veterans, beginners, you develop a type of vocabulary that you can tap into or not tap into. And then, you know, a lot of it's just really just experience. You know, the more you do it, the more you're gonna get better at it, you know. And, you know, record yourself, listen back, you know, record your groups that you're playing in with, listen back, and, you know, you don't have to like nitpick and analyze everything, but, you know, figure out what's working, what's not working, and, you know, develop from there.
Yeah. Also working with, like, on the theme that John and Tony were talking about, taking motives and simple ideas, and don't necessarily have to work with something complex, right? Like a whole line or something. But could we just play like one chorus to see if it is?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to take like a couple of notes and so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. I play more than a couple notes. But the idea is like work with something that's not, because you know, our tendency sometimes is work on lines, work on beat, you know, that's all good. But also work on being able to kind of float, like while the time's going to float and play these little ideas and motives on the bar lines and start in different play parts of the measure and just feel what that feels like and try different things. Even if you try something you feel like, oh, I'm not even sure about that, just try it. And because you're going to find what it feels like to at least try that, and then you can start to think, oh, what was I feeling, or how can I make that work, that sort of stuff.
Oh, the thing I always forget to say, because I don't really teach that often, but I find like don't forget to explore developing something dynamically. And taking a simple idea and messing around with it, moving it around in the bar, making it different lengths. If you're talking to someone, you're telling a story, you might start with small fragments and hone in on an idea and expound on it, right? So you flesh out ideas and put in more detail and more atmosphere around an idea. And put the little things in and put the big things in. Think about size and how much space you take up, and drawing somebody into an idea by putting it soft, and notes that are different volumes around each other. Try exploring everything the same, and then try explore different dynamics. Sometimes we forget about that stuff. I know I have.
Yeah, some of my favorite players, you talk about the little things, there might be just some quirky thing at the end of a phrase.
Yeah.
And then the dynamics of the line too, there's the dynamics of the whole band, building. A lot of times we want to build a solo and it kind of does this. But there's the dynamics of each line too, we have to remember, and accents. That's something I feel like we forget about, or a lot of musicians forget about that. The rhythmic variety, there's rhythmic variety in the length of notes that you choose, 8 notes, 16 notes, but then there's the accent of them that gives that swing or rhythm, and things that you can hook up with the guys in the band. But I'm trying to think of a way to play an example of just a weird, quirky thing at the end. I know. For some reason I'm thinking Kurt.
Yeah.
Kurt Rosenwink will do that stuff too. We all do that stuff. Just these strange little things oh, interesting choice. That I like that kind of stuff.
That was a Charlie Parker tune called Visa, by the way.
That's true. That was. And also, that tune, that head is just full of rhythmic ideas.
All of his heads.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point, because even though, transcribing solos and learning words, that's all good work too. But I also will, for myself, and tell students, just learn a bunch of bebop heads, because not only is all the information there, but then you have a bunch of tunes to choose from, and a variety of tunes. I remember I had some revelation quite a while ago where you do these little little restaurant gigs, and I thought, God, I think I only really know 5 blues heads or something,
Right.
And then I went on this mission of I'm going to learn a bunch of new ones, and then wow, this is fun, and and then I can call them and just tell the drummer ends on and a 3.
Right. It's interesting too, all the different versions of these tunes. And while we're on the subject, I was playing something a little different than you were in the head, like the. Is that what it is? Or the version that I learned.
I play
So that's.
That's one.
There's another note that I was like, oh, Steve's playing something different in a different part of the tune.
There's also, but those are part of it, because that head is full of a bunch of harmonies.
Right.
So I remember when I first learned it, it was kind of challenging to figure out what was the melody, because they're also kind of integrated.
Yeah.
But I just kind of landed on a few, and then we'll put bits of the harmony in it, just to kind of,
Nice.
think.
One thing I think about sometimes, I don't know exactly how to say the word, but I'm going to try it. If I fail, nobody's going to die. So anyway, kind of like music. Sometimes I will take information out as a way to kind of feel freer in the moment. And you know, I remember first thinking about this, I was in one of those Barry Harris workshops, and Barry was, you know, I was quite young, and he was like, there's no 2 chords, only 5s. I was like, wow. And I started realizing all the ways that I was hearing that already, and definitely in the way Ron Carter makes bass lines, that it's definitely, like, he'll remove, some players will add stuff all over the place. They'll add little 2/5s, they'll add real slick little descending runs, and they'll all look at each other, oh yeah, we know we're doing this. You know, it's like, and okay, that's really cool. But Ron Carter will remove giant chunks of stuff, and it'll liberate everything. And I kind of think it's part of my job to help things feel good, but also to set people free, like to set the soloist free, so I don't dictate where they're going, you know, so I help them get there. Leave a space for them. Sometimes removing informational stuff can help do that. Sometimes it'll jail them too, and that's not good, but you know, you try stuff and you see what happens as you go. But what's a good example? Like, I'm going to play a chorus of blues. Let's play one chorus and then I'll solo a chorus. All right? So you play 1, 2, 1, 2. Dumb can get, but if you keep calm and listen to it, it can be fun, and I think fun is good. So I don't know. You ever hear those Herbie Ron Trio records? Sure. Like Third Plane.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And there's that tune.
Oh yeah. I think that's Third Plane.
Yeah. And the whole solo, Ron just stays on one chord.
Yeah.
And the form is there, it's absolutely there. The form is absolutely there. There's no doubt in my mind they're all playing the same song. It's the same length every time. And the solo is... And it just kind of goes, and it's like... And it's like fascinating, you know, because I love Ron Carter so much, it's fascinating to me. I think it's pretty fascinating overall, but sometimes that can be a good path, you know, to remove stuff and find your calm. Find a place where you feel comfortable and like where you feel calm enough to try stuff. You know, if you're getting overwhelmed, I get overwhelmed with a lot of information, so that's one way that works for me.
And you're playing ideas rather than lines.
Right.
Yeah.
I never could remember the line so well.
It's killer. It's amazing.
Not to mention the fact that he was swinging like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, after the head and implied form, you know, I kind of felt the glue was like bass and drums. You know, you guys were playing, interplaying in between everything. Then, you know, I kind of was thinking, well, you guys know what 4 and 5 was, but you weren't concerned about 4 and 5. You know, that kind of thing. And so the chords in between was just envision what kept the top of it from eventually getting back to the top? Was it, you know what I'm saying?
Top of the form?
Yeah, you know, the forms and everything, the form was great, fantastic, but then you took it out.
Right.
And somewhere in that plethora of, you know, creativity, I would say there was something that bound you to a point where, and I know part of it was drums, but I didn't hear, you know, that movement back to the tonic until you got there.
Right.
So that was the question that I'm kind of asking. When did you decide that, okay, we're going to eventually get there together with the maze of, you know, creativity that was going on there? Well, I know it's more than just individual.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
definitely.
it was definitely, you know, so was it drums and bass?
I'm not sure where in the performance you're speaking of exactly, but bass has a lot to do with it, and Tony can kind of follow where things go, and he can lead where things go with the choices, you know, the root choices. And I think also just playing the number of times we've played a C blues, unexpected things are fun. You know,
Yeah,
if he doesn't go to the root right at the top, it's like, you know, cool. It gives the sense of it's still kind of like floating, and there's no like grounding yet. Like
It felt good. It was, you know, really good. Somehow, you know, we knew that the melody was getting ready to happen again sooner or later. You know,
There was a certain sense of comfort and trust. Like John said, we played 12-bar blues a lot.
yeah.
Probably doesn't mean that we think we're experts either.
Right.
You know, we're always still learning. But at the same time, and because we have played together, we're real comfortable right away. And so then it's just more like we're just playing ideas, and we know where that stuff
So you
comes
guys-
down. And sometimes we do bring it down right on the one. at the
Yeah,
top.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes we don't, but we're not intentionally thinking we're going to or not. It's more just like what's happening in those moments and where are they leading us.
right.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I think the exercise you talked about before, and you alluded to a little bit, is like, you know, having the idea and moving it around in the bar.
Yeah.
And those kinds of exercises can liberate you from always kind of needing to, you know, accent the downbeat and things like that. You feel how the melody you're playing feels when it starts on this beat, and it's the same melody, like a monk melody,
Yeah.
you know, would do.
But at the same time, it's like I always like to say, with all that experimentation, the downbeat can be like the best thing to hit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. After all the, all the tension or whatever, and then, for sure.
You need all the balance of
Yeah.
all those things.
Also, like, I like your question so much because it made me think of like, again, the lengths of things, right? Even if it's not just one person's solo, if the band is playing around with resolved tendencies and unresolved tendencies, of which the blues is made up of that, like that form is made up of, it starts at home, it goes somewhere, it asks a few questions, and then answers something, right? Basically, it's unresolved and resolved. And to liberate that and maybe not resolve it for a few courses together as a feeling, whatever that is, you know, I might not be able to put it into words, but to keep that suspended and not drop the next top of the form, or even the next one after that, because things are going well, and we're communicating, and we're tuned in, we're listening to each other, and it seems to want to stay a little undefined for a while. That can be really nice to be able to live there. You know what I mean? To be able to live in an unresolved place. And you know, that you can drop the idea, you can keep the form collectively and still not emphasize it. you know, and create a longer idea than just the chords or the bar line,
Yeah.
or even the form of the tune. And it can, yeah, it can feel free of that too. So I like that.
It gets to Ornette's thing a little, you know, because of where he was taking. Although, you know, when they played his heads, you know, I found more and more when you listen, they actually are still kind of following his tune form in a way.
Yeah.
It sounds, but,
Right.
and it's not like real regimented, but it's like an acknowledgement of like, yeah, you know, it's free harmonically maybe, but.
Right. Yeah, the placement of the phrases,
Yeah.
the unexpected.
Yeah.
I find that easier, like the melodic shifting, easier than the harmonic shifting, because you get used to hearing like a root happen in a certain place if it happens early.
Yeah.
You know, it can. That's a harder thing to keep grounded for me, maybe just as a pianist, like freeing up my sense of harmony in a rhythmic way, the harmonic progression. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it keeps it exciting and interesting. Definitely for the musicians and hopefully for the listener. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about your compositional process.
Okay. I mean, it kind of starts with just sitting down and improvising, running, you know, recording it with a voice memo app, and because you're talking about being self-critical, that's a problem I have, and I'll sit down because I'll feel the need to write, like I feel the need to express myself somehow. So I'll just sit down and start playing, and immediately I have all these criticisms, like, oh, you've done that before, or oh, you know, what a trite melody, you know, just all these thoughts. So the reason why I record it is that, you know, a couple days later I'll play it back and it'll hit me maybe emotionally like, wow, that's good. So what that it sounds a little bit like that other tune. Like where I am emotionally in that moment is a different place. So I'm not as critical. And then if it is good, then I sit down and start to craft, and maybe it'll reveal itself as to what band it's for. I mean, I'm kind of lucky I have this band, and I get to write for Brian Blade and Fellowship Band. And so yeah, I'll try to decide, is this something I hear, you know, Steve and I playing a melody, or is this a saxophone-led thing? And yeah, I take it from there. And basically, yeah, how I craft, I mean, I do try to use some of those techniques that I was briefly talking about, the like coming up with an idea and really twisting it and turning it backwards and upside down, and using some of those techniques that, you know, not to compare what I do to Bach, but using those techniques, you know. And I think originally I didn't really do it consciously. It just kind of came out, you know, maybe from learning tunes and learning tunes that I loved, and trying to figure out why do I like this tune? Why does it hit me emotionally? And what can I do to write a tune like that? You know, how can I write? I was very influenced by Steve Mazakowski's tunes, you know, and as a student here in New Orleans, you know, tried to learn as many as I could and tried to figure out why do I love that so much, you know? And so yeah, just trying to create a great melody and the way it fits with the harmony and maybe an interesting form, something that one of the bands I'm in hasn't done before, an interesting orchestration, you know. What if it pairs down to just saxophones for a minute, or, you know, things like that. So I do think a lot about those things after I've kind of got a tune going, you know. And the tunes I was writing a few years ago, they were so long. I would have idea after idea, and I wouldn't know how to edit. And over a period, I decided that I like the shorter. You know, having a shorter tune and a shorter solo form, and that way people can, you know, musicians can do things with it, and we can make it free and do those things rather than have just chord after chord after chord, which I was writing a lot. And piano players, not to pick on piano players, but we do that a lot because we just write chord after chord. And Yeah, so, I mean, I'm kind of getting long-winded, but that's just kind of like how I do it, I guess. And then there was a period where I got kind of tired of what I was doing, and I thought, well, what if I write away from the piano? And I was on a tour where, you know, I was in this van driving around Poland, and I had a laptop, so I'm just going to put notes on the page, you know, on Finale, just on the screen, and like come up with things in my head. And that's interesting too, you know, because then I get away from the being moved by playing something at the piano. You know, that's kind of how I decide if I like something, if I get like a little chill or whatever, you know. And so, you know, when you're at the computer and you hear those Finale sounds coming back at you, you don't get much of a chill. Unless the AC is on. But yeah, it makes you have to like, okay, I'm going to write something great without really hearing it played well. You know, try to do that. So that's an interesting approach.
Have you ever tried writing like that without hearing it even in back, just like putting notes down and then like leave it alone, then come back and then play it and see?
I have done that before.
Yeah.
Before I had a computer, I did that. I remember I wrote something on a plane. I was like, oh, I'm so excited about this. And I got home like, this is hard.
What about the last piece you guys played last night that was for your hometown?
Oh, the kind of repetitive kind of tone poem. I mean, I think I improvised that.
Did you have like that idea in mind that you were writing it for that
I
place?
didn't. No, it kind of came afterwards. I just kind of came up with the idea and started playing, and came up with a melody. And then sometimes it takes a long time to come up with titles. Because I'm like, I don't know what I was feeling. It's just a melody and some chords. But that evoked something, you know, and it was kind of like a flowing, you know, kind of aquatic kind of vibe to me, you know. So I started thinking about nostalgic things and wanted to write something for where I grew up.
I'm curious, do you have incomplete ideas in your notebooks for years?
Yeah.
And then you come back and maybe now they're useful?
Absolutely.
Things like that? Yeah.
I've had that happen, yeah, where I wrote a piece of music and used like the bridge from 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And in fact, I played a suite last night, and I think the last movement I had lying around for a long time. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then I started writing a new tune at some point and thought, oh, this is connected to that other piece that's been sitting around. So then I wrote a middle section to try to connect the front and the end.
Is that the
Well, yeah, that's part of it, but the...
yeah. Oh, wow.
I had that for a long time.
Really?
I'm like, that's just an idea, it's not a tune.
Wow. I can't imagine that without that.
So,
I've written tunes where, you know, because when you hear a tune, you think, wow, how did he do that? You know, you just must have heard, you know. I've had tunes where I write the second half first. And then it's like, is that a tune okay? And then you just kind of leave it alone and you come back and something else needs to happen. And you do something, and go, oh wow, no, oh okay, maybe. And then I wrote the first half based on the second half, but that was the tune Lost and Found.
yeah.
I wrote the second half first, and I thought, that's the tune, but going around and around on this is going to get old, you know.
Right.
And then I came up with a little interlude, and I said, wait a minute, that could be a cool way to start it, because it doesn't start the same key. You know, you start kind of like working with the clay, so to speak, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes ideas definitely can run away from ambition. And, you know, like, I think Steve's point earlier, don't stop yourselves. If you hear an idea, try not to drudge it. Just try to just put it somewhere. You know, a phone is good. I had a BlackBerry until like, you know, last fall, but you know, now I have a smartphone. It's got the little voice memo thing, and I've already filled it up. It's kind of great.
It seems like as jazz compositions get more complex, that that, you know, it was always a model that it was a vehicle for improvisation.
Right.
You know, short tune, we can blow on. Let's get past the head, blow on. And now
Yeah.
things have gotten so complex.
Right.
Are you writing things that you think that sometimes this is a great tune, but it would be a drag to try to solo on this? Or you write different changes for the solo sections? And
Yeah,
things
I've
like
definitely done that. I mean, in the beginning, I think we were ambitious. We were like, let's try to solo over these changes. And some of the first fellowship tunes are like so long, and the forms are incredibly long. It's like, but yeah, I did a gig one time at the 55 Bar with Dave Binney and Adam Rogers and Clarence Penn and the bass player that also plays with Bill, very quiet.
Oh, Thomas.
Thomas Morgan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those hard forms, he can play them. You really
Yeah.
So he starts talking.
And I got ambitious. I'm like, I'm going to write a 12-tone tune for this gig. And I did, and it was horrible. And it was like, it had all these chords, just all these chords. And we were like blowing, and then Dave took a solo, and I took a solo. And then all of a sudden, Thomas is just, he's playing like just F sharp, F sharp, F sharp. And I'm like, is he lost? And the guys in the band had just been like, okay, this is enough. Like, come on. Then afterwards, I was hanging with Dave, and Dave's like, you should think about writing a tune, whatever the tune comes out in a way that it comes out, and you write it down. Then you have a little solo section. And maybe it's just 2 chords. Then the band can do a lot of stuff with it, And I'm like, that's a great idea. Because, up until then, we've been learning like all the great classic tunes, and it's a form, and you play over the form. So yeah, that was a great suggestion.
I have a question about like guitar and piano together. As a guitar player, I always, find it kind of challenging playing with piano players, and I wondered if you guys could talk about that, as far as like anything from, tone to range, and both playing chords at the same time, or comping for someone else, like say behind bass or behind, if there's a saxophone player in the band as well. Just, any kind of tips or ideas about that.
Yeah.
Well, piano players are very selfish in the way. So we guitar players, you have to just kind of do what we can.
Just turn it up.
My amps were invented.
Right.
No, really though. There's a lot of different scenarios that come into play. So I'll start with this group. So we're playing mostly Jon's composition, right? Pretty much all your compositions. And so I'm really in the role of a horn a lot of the time. My general kind of internal rule is that I don't comp for a pianist because, well, But when he started his Visa solo, he started just playing all right hand. So I thought, I wasn't even consciously thinking, but it was like, oh, that's nice. I think I could comp a little for that. And I was almost getting the feeling like he was opening it up for me like that. Without even, we played enough together where I can make those assumptions. And then same with Jon's compositions, like, I won't comp for your piano solos overall, but that sometimes if I feel like it's like more textural and it's a color and it's not doing the same thing that he's doing, like if he's playing rhythmically, I don't want to play rhythmically. I'm going to do something that's more long tone or maybe on the downbeats a long tone if he's being really syncopated, that sort of thing. That would also apply on a swing tune. Generally, wouldn't comp together on a swing tune. But if we had to, which I would take if he was really leading the comping, then I would be very back and playing probably just like thirds and sevenths. If he's playing very rhythmic, I would, just keep it really, and I'm trying to play a bunch of extensions, things, because I don't want to put us in a situation where he's going, and I'm going,
Right.
that isn't necessarily bad, but so for this group, it's a little bit of a multifaceted role. It's like horn, and then I can be a comp. He'll allow for me to comp. Tony took a solo. I could have comped, but not for him. Because he was going places, and I didn't want to force him. You know, if I start hearing he's going around to some other places, maybe harmonically, I don't want to force him into somewhere he isn't. You know. So, but if there was a horn player with us, then John and I might be more like, he might allow for me to comp for the horn, since he knows that he's going to probably comp for me. But that doesn't mean that's always going to go that way, because I'm going to want it to be a predictable thing either. So like I said, there's a bunch of little different kind of ways you can think about it, and the more you're in those situations, the more you get just more of an intuitive sense of what to do. But that's kind of the long, short answer.
Yeah.
That was very tasteful, what you did at the end of the suite last night. I was up front, I could hear the chords. It was a nice long tone strum, and it stayed out of the way, but yet it still complemented.
This Mercy Suite?
Yeah.
That last section you were just playing?
Yeah.
And I thought that was, very tasteful.
Oh, thanks. That was a good example of everything is so kind of open and long that it's easy for us to play chords together, because it's really kind of specific thing going on.
6/9 chord.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what is it, like an A minor stuff?
Yeah, it's like A minor.
It's like A minor. It starts out in minor, right?
Yeah.
So there's that melody that's going on. There's just like one little voice moving. So it's these really subtle little movements, and I'm very much aware of that, and I play it a lot of it. But then when we get at the end, we might be just kind of hitting one thing.
Yeah. And some of the things we can play in unison too,
Yeah.
and it really works. I love guitar, and I love writing. I don't even know if it's conscious, but I'll write things that I think are guitar-ish, guitar-centric.
You make it easy for a guitar to play.
I mean, I love those like guitar harmonies,
Yeah.
where you have open strings against, resonating against, that are kind of close in the voicings, and yeah, like that.
But I mean, that all being said, like, I've heard that kind of, I've heard people wonder about that thing before, and then I find myself in a situation like I was in last week, where I was on a thing for about 3 days, where we rehearsed all day for 3 days, and then on the third day we played a show, and there was a lot of artists, and there was a large band, probably almost as many people in the band as all of you, and there were 2 bass players. It was myself and Greg Cohn, who's a great string bass player. And I was playing all the electric stuff, and he was playing all the upright stuff, but we ended up on pretty much at least half of the music playing at the same time. And sometimes it doesn't matter what the instruments are, sometimes it's about how you're playing what you're playing, and if you're playing it generously, if you're playing it with the spirit of helping the music, it can be almost any instrument with any other instrument. It's just how you're going about it. If you like some of my favorite bands have 2 drummers, and let's see, on that gig there were 3 guitar players, there were 2 keyboard players, there were 2 bass players. So yeah, it all worked. We were all playing, and so sometimes I was playing, and he was playing with the bow, and sometimes we were both playing pits, and it's funny how what can work if you are interested in it working, you know? I think it's good to be open to it.
Also, while you're doing rehearsals at school, like in class, it's worth it to experiment with comping with piano. Like, that's the perfect opportunity to say, can we make this work, make it feel good? We might not normally do this, but it might come a time where you do, or it's happening. So you got to learn how to make that work.
Can I change the subject just for a second? Since most of you guys are New York based and you have this extensive sideman career, can each one of you talk a little bit about, if you are a young musician and are going to go to New York, what you need to be prepared? You know, songs you should know, you need to be able to read, you need to be on time, which is not a thing that people are used to doing in New Orleans. But just talk, what's that? Oh, yeah, right.
I watched this.
No, but I mean, just as because you guys just work with so many people, and there's, you know, even personality. I mean, you know, that can be a great factor in why you get hired or not get hired. You know?
Yeah, I think all of those things are a big part of it. I watched a master class that Ron Carter gave here, and someone asked him, like, what's your secret to the length of your career and all these different styles? And he's like, I show up on time and I play great. I mean, that's like, that's most of it. You know? And getting along with people, I mean, if you're going to go on the road, I've heard so many people say, I would take such and such, but there's such a drag on the road, or like, you know, they complain about this, or, you know, obviously, we want to make sure everyone's comfortable and happy when you're a leader, but you also want to be friends or get along with whoever it is in your band. And I'm lucky, you know, we're all friends, and it's easy. You know, the logistic part is pretty easy when I have my act together, and but you know, and that kind of transfers too to the bandstand. You know, if someone's like all upset or angry at something, you know, it kind of comes out musically. But yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to be like easygoing to get gigs. I mean, obviously the most important thing is what you can play. And I don't know what the tunes these days are that you have to learn. I mean, it kind of changes with generations a little bit. When I first moved to New York, people were really into learning, like, you know, Cedar Walton tunes and Benny Golson, and right. you had to know Along Came Betty, and you were like Augies when we would go.
There was
Augies and Smalls in the beginning. There was a lot of bebop, and then writing. We were writing a lot too. But there seemed to be a repertoire at that time. I'm not sure what it is now. I mean, as many monk tunes as you can learn. Steve knows a lot, if not all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
And Bird too.
I would say, like, to like,
I'm still learning.
you know, to be a little bit flexible is good. It doesn't mean you're not being yourself. You know, I mean, it's important to not just be a chameleon. I think to myself, I don't want to just be a chameleon, but I grow when I tend to find that I grow if I play with someone new, and what the situation seems to need is for me to play a lot less, or to just broaden my approach to leave room for something else that I'm not used to. I tend to grow from it, and it doesn't make me, you know, if I can remain open to that, I end up growing from it, and I end up getting to play more different music with different people. Sometimes people will ask you to do things that are really unfamiliar. It's good to try it. You know, it's good to try it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about being in New York is there's just so much different opportunities and styles and genres and tunes and personalities. I think the biggest thing is just to be, you know, humble. Also be open to trying different things with different people, getting to know people over time, you know, because a lot of times when you see these, you know, various bands at various festivals and et cetera, it's like they're actually like friends. They like actually know and hang out, and you know, yes, sometimes you might get a cold call to sub for someone or you know, step in, but generally it's like you got to build relationships over time. You know, obviously there's always going to be, you know, certain people that just go there and then they just take off. You know, they're playing with Marcus Miller, whoever, you know. But generally, it takes a long time to really develop your own sense of self, style, repertoire amongst tunes and music, and also amongst people. I think it's just, you know, you just got to be open, play as much as you can with different people, practice a lot, practice writing, you know, even if your tunes don't sound great at the start, but over time things will get better, you know. And just, you know, be optimistic, you know, it just takes a long time to really get things rolling. Like, not to like put a number or time, but, you know, generally it takes about 10 years really to really make something start to happen there. And that goes for any city in general, you know, if you're in Nashville, Los Angeles, wherever, it takes a while. You know, of course, there's always going to be, you know, these, for whatever reason, these people that just get the green light and then they're straight to the top. But don't worry about that. You know, just take your time, and you know, good things will happen.
It doesn't mean it'll be 10 years before you get a gig.
Right? Yeah, I'm not saying that. But, you
It
know,
just means
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like, you might actually be playing little gigs, getting to know some people within a couple of years or whatever. And it's a building process. Everything Alan said was really right on. It's kind of like you've gone there and you have these things, you're learning music, you're learning more music, you're practicing, you're meeting new people. You've made a commitment to a life somewhere else. And you'll know if you want to follow through with it. Because a town like New York in particular can be really challenging on a lot of levels. You know, just trying to make a living and things like that. However, you know, if you're like, I'm going to stick it out, this feels good, I feel like this is where I want to be, I think if your intentions are there, things will happen.
Yeah, it just takes time.
Do you think it's better to be strong at what you're strong at as opposed to trying to be good at everything? I mean, everybody gets called for certain things. Like,
Right.
you know, I have a Latin gig, so I know this drummer can play this kind of stuff, or this guitar player has the Pat Metheny sound, that kind of stuff. Or I remember Rick Margitza was always telling me he would be the Michael Brecker substitute. When they couldn't get Michael Brecker and they couldn't get Bob Minster or whatever, they would call him or whatever. So, you know, that was one of his strengths, you know. So what do you think? Do you think that's important to find out what you're really good at or what people like about you?
I think it is. I think it is, definitely. And I think also some of you guys up here, all of us are lucky in the sense that, you know, a lot of the other styles of people that we play with are very open.
Yeah.
And like that we have a jazz kind of thing, you know, and maybe, you know, I could mention Brian too, you know, Blade, and just his sound is what everybody wants, you know, and he could be playing like something that's just very light or something incredibly, you know, dynamic with different bands, and, you know, it's because he has the sound that and a feel that everybody likes, and it goes for everybody in this band, you know, it's the same thing. And I remember Johnny V told me that when I was at Loyola. He's like, if you play and it makes the music feel good, everybody's going to call you.
There you go.
So it's almost like that's as important as
Exactly.
like your individualities. If you know, and you'll get calls if you're bringing something to the music that kind of helps to lift it up a little bit. But I think having your own voice too is really important.
Yeah. You can have your own voice in any context.
Right.
It still could be you. I'm of the belief that there's always got to be room for everybody in music. There's got to be room. There's got to be room. It's just, what are we doing? It's not. I'm not like going on the Grammys or anything. I don't care about that. I play music in rooms for people, sometimes outdoors, on sidewalks, especially in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of gigs in New York that were outside of restaurants because we weren't allowed to play unless people were buying food. You couldn't have a ticket at an event somewhere. I loved it. I loved it. It was an incredibly liberating thing for me. I thought, this is great. I'm not getting on airplanes. I'm here in town and we're getting to play it. It means so much. And that means that, and people were loving it, that means there's a need for it that means there's room for all of you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tony, because a lot of times we all get bogged down and we see like downbeat charts or NPR listings and New York Times, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, there's so many people in this world and so many opportunities to create music that even hasn't been played or performed or written yet. So you gotta have to keep your eyes and ears open to new possibilities. You know, a lot of times when people say New York is create your own gig, meaning, hey, there's like a cafe somewhere. Hey, can approach the owner or the business person and say, hey, can my trio or duo come play once a week or every other month or something, and just work on stuff there, and you might be able to build something there and take it somewhere else, you know.
That's how 55 are.
Yeah.
Started having music, I think it was Mike, right? Mike Stern started playing on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
or Mondays or something.
Yeah,
And then
so
before you know it,
next
it's-
record starts.
Yeah, just, you know, keep your outlook positive and open. Just because, you know, you don't see your name on whatever listing or, you know, that all that stuff is really irrelevant. Like Tony said, you know, just playing music for people in rooms, streets, wherever. As long as you're having fun and you're able to support yourself, you know, that's success in my eye.
Definitely, me too. And I mean, I do it more than ever, and I love it, and it keeps the priority clear. And, you know, and as we have to make a living too, it's good to learn to be pragmatic and also to try and act in solidarity with each other. Try and act in solidarity with the community that you're in, and don't undercut each other. Try and think about, well, what would be an ethical way to set this up? This guy's willing to have some music in this cafe. He's, you know, someone has a place where we could play. Try and work out something that might be lasting, that might be lasting for more than just yourself. You know, that would be good, and other people it can grow. You know, can be a good thing.
Well, I see that your ride is here, man. Y'all want to play something, another song, and then...
Play one more thing? What do you guys want to play? Do you have any requests?
Play some Monk? Oh, yeah. You make the call.
Yeah.
Baya? Baya?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is that it?